Hello everyone, welcome to our first video for Year 11 Biology. We're going to look at cells today. So we're looking at Unit 1, how do organisms regulate their functions, and Area Study 1, how do cells function. So this topic, or this video rather, is going to be quite a lengthy video. What I would like you to do is take down notes as you watch it. You can pause, rewatch bits if you don't understand. Also write down any questions you have and bring them to class so I can go through them with you. So while you're taking notes, I expect you to be using the Cornell note-taking style. Hopefully I would have gone through this with you in class, but we have found that this is super useful and super effective in helping our students study best. So as you go through, remember to take down notes, add things in, as well as write down any questions you may have. Study design links for this topic include cells as the basic structural feature of life on Earth, including the distinction between prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells. The second dot point, we are going to focus on the second half, so the need for internal compartment organelles with specific cellular functions. And lastly, the structure and specialization of plant and animal cell organelles for distinct functions, including chloroplasts and mitochondria. So VCAR singles out the chloroplast and mitochondria, so we know that they are important organelles, and we're going to focus on them in some detail. Why is it important to know about cells? Well, everything in biology relates to cells. Evolution, DNA, genetics, photosynthesis, and more all correlate to the cell. Why? Because cells make life happen. Some organisms, like us, are multicellular. Others are like bacteria, are single cells. All the parts of the cell that you learn about today will tie into every topic that we learn in biology throughout the year and as well as next year. So cell theory, to start with, the first part of cell theory is that all living things are made up of cells. Cells are the basic unit of structure and function of life, and cells come from pre-existing cells. So this flowchart is really useful. It breaks things down into non-living things and living things. So non-living things are non-cellular, not made up of cells, for example, viruses. Living things are made up of cells, the first part of the cell theory. The two groups we're going to look at are prokaryotic cells and eukaryotic cells. An example of prokaryotic cells are bacteria, so very small types of cells. Eukaryotic cells are much larger, for example, fungus, protista, animal cells, and plant cells. We're going to focus on these two down the bottom here. Eukaryotic cells have a nucleus. DNA is in strands called chromosomes. They have membrane-bound organelles and can be multicellular or unicellular. They divide by mitosis and meiosis, which we'll go into more. Examples, like I said before, animals, fungi, plants, protists. This is a diagram of a eukaryotic cell. It's a very simple diagram that shows you the structure of a eukaryotic cell. Prokaryotic cells are much more simple. They don't have a nucleus. The DNA is circular. No membrane-bound organelles. They're unicellular, and they divide by binary fission, which is a process we're going to go into later. So examples are bacteria and archaea. This is a prokaryotic cell, very simple, not a lot going on compared to the eukaryotic cell. This is bacteria, and this is archaea. So prokaryotic cells are much smaller, less complex than eukaryotic cells. They're also older. They evolved nearly 1 million years before eukaryotic cells. It is in fact theorized that eukaryotic cells evolved from prokaryotic cells that ingested other prokaryotes. On this slide for just a moment to look at the difference between eukaryotes and prokaryotes. This table summarizes and compares them very well. This is what you should be able to do because the study design dot point says you need to be able to compare these two types of cells. You need to know the difference between unicellular organisms, so organisms made up of just a single cell, or multicellular organisms like us that are made up of numerous cells. So for unicellular organisms, division of labor is at the organelle level and it gives a low level of operation efficiency, meaning that all the organism's functions have to be taken care of within this single cell. Whereas in a multicellular organism, division of labor may be at a cellular, tissue, organ, and organ system level, meaning that different parts of the organism can have different roles, and not every single cell needs to play the same role. So we can divide the labor up better, and therefore we operate more efficiently. So for unicellular organisms, a single cell carries out all life purposes. This is an amoeba. It is a eukaryotic unicellular organism, whereas for multicellular organisms, different cells are specialized to perform different functions. So we have smooth muscle cells, we have red blood cells, nerve cells, we have bone tissue cells, and so on. So we have different types of cells that have different functions. And lastly, unicellular organisms, the cell body is exposed to the environment on all sides, whereas in multicellular organisms, only outer cells are specialized to face the environment. Inner cells are devoted to other functions. So the first part of a cell that I want you to be aware of and I want you to know is the plasma membrane. It is a selectively permeable barrier between the intracellular environment, so in here, the inside of the cell, and the extracellular environment, this environment outside the cell, and is made up of a phospholipid bilayer. We will go into detail about the plasma membrane later on. It is found in both prokaryotes and eukaryotes and surrounds the whole cell. It helps regulate the movement of substances in and out of the cells, transmits signals, protects the internal cell environment. The cytoplasm is also a term I want you to know. So it refers to the gel-like fluid, so the cytosol inside the cell that contains all organelles. It's found inside all eukaryotic and prokaryotic cells and holds all the components of the cell. So all this jelly-like fluid inside the cell is considered to be cytosol. And if we look at all the organelles, so all these little things inside the cell plus that fluid, that's what we consider to be cytoplasm. And cytoplasm includes everything except the nucleus. So from the nucleus here all the way out to the cell membrane here, that is all cytoplasm. We get on to the main part, organelles. They are present in both eukaryotic and prokaryotic cells. However, only eukaryotic organelles have a membrane. Organelle means little organ, and each has their own function, which you need to know. Starting off with the mitochondria, because the study design singles this one out, I've circled it in this image of a cell over here in red. It is a unique double membrane bound organelle which contains its own DNA, and it's found in all eukaryotic cells. So this is what a mitochondria looks like inside a cell and the mitochondrial DNA. So what does a mitochondria do? Well, it generates ATP or cellular energy by breaking down glucose through the process of aerobic respiration. So this is how we get energy to help our cells complete the functions that are necessary to keep us alive. This is the chemical formula for aerobic respiration. What I do need you to know is that the inputs are glucose and oxygen, and the outputs are carbon dioxide, water, and energy. So we eat food, so glucose, we breathe in oxygen, the mitochondria undergoes aerobic respiration, we breathe out carbon dioxide, water is produced, and so is energy. Mitochondria have two membranes, as I mentioned before. The outer membrane, we can see over here, and a highly folded inner membrane over here. This is where the electron transport chain is located and is the last step of aerobic respiration, which synthesizes ATP. So this is where ATP is created. The space inside this inner membrane, so this blue space here, is called the matrix, and the folds, so these specific folds in this inner membrane are called cristae. So it's important that you understand the structure and the function of the mitochondria. The organelle that the study design singles out are chloroplasts. So they are also double membrane bound organelles that contain light absorbing pigments. However, they're only found in plant and algae cells, both being eukaryotic cells. I've circled the chloroplast here. So this green organ. What do chloroplasts do? Well, they use energy from the sun, so sunlight, to produce glucose through the process of photosynthesis. Again, we have the chemical formula. What I want you to know is that plants take in carbon dioxide and water, and with the help of sunlight and chlorophyll, plants are able to produce glucose and oxygen. Chloroplasts also have two membranes, an inner membrane, this light blue layer, and an outer membrane, which controls the movement of substances in and out. Chloroplasts contain thylakoids over here. Grana or granum are the stacks of the thylakoids, and stroma is the fluid inside the chloroplast. And these structures are all involved in photosynthesis. Chlorophyll, as you would have seen in the formula for photosynthesis on the last slide, is a green pigment found in the thylakoid, so these discs, the thylakoids here, which absorb light for photosynthesis to occur. Next organelle is arguably the most important organelle in a cell, so the nucleus. It is a large central membrane-bound organelle which contains all our DNA. So super important for the functioning of a cell. It's found only in eukaryotic cells, so both plant and animal cells have a nucleus, and it protects our DNA. There is a nuclear envelope around the nucleus, so a porous membrane that encases the nucleus. They have nuclear pores that allow certain substances to pass into and out of the nucleus. This you will learn more about in Year 12 biology. Again, only found in eukaryotic cells, and helps protect the nucleus by controlling what goes in and out. So inside the nucleus, we have a structure called the nucleolus, and it is made of RNA and proteins, and it's only found in eukaryotic cells. It is responsible for making ribosomes, which is another organelle we're going to get into right now. We have ribosomes, so they're made up of RNA and protein. They're found in the cytoplasm of both eukaryotic and prokaryotic cells. They are sometimes found freely in the freely in the cell, like over here, or they can be found attached to the endoplasmic reticulum in eukaryotic cells. This is what a ribosome looks like. So we have a large subunit and a small subunit, and they're involved in the assembling the building blocks, so amino acids to form proteins. Super important in creating proteins, which are essential for functioning of cells. The endoplasmic reticulum is a tunnel-like network of membranes connected to the nucleus and branching out into the cytoplasm, as you can see here, and it's only found in eukaryotic cells, of course, because it is membrane bound, and we only have membrane bound organelles in eukaryotic cells. There are two different types of endoplasmic reticulum, or ER. So smooth ER, which doesn't have ribosomes attached to it, or rough ER, which has ribosomes attached to it. So smooth ER helps make lipids, so fats, and stores them for cellular use. Rough ER is primarily responsible for the transportation of proteins, which are created on the ribosomes that are attached to it. We have the Golgi apparatus, or the Golgi body. This is one of my favorite organelles. It is a membrane-bound organelle which helps process and package the proteins that come from the ER and ribosomes. It is found in eukaryotic cells, again, because it is membrane-bound. As you can see here, it's highly folded, and it's this pinkish looking structure. It acts like a post office by packaging the proteins in vesicles that are then delivered to other parts of the cell. These vesicles containing proteins exit the Golgi body and are sent to parts of the cells that need them, or are excreted from the cell to travel wherever it is needed. So I just mentioned this as they are involved in taking proteins from the Golgi apparatus to other parts of the cells, or are taken outside of the cell. They are small membrane-bound sacs, and because they're membrane-bound, only found in eukaryotic cells, they help transport different things. They're kind of like a taxi service, taking things in and out of the cell. They have many uses, but mostly are important for cell transport. Lysosomes, they're vesicles. They're a type of vesicle that contain a powerful digestive enzyme, again only found in eukaryotic cells. They break down all parts of the cells, cell waste, toxins, fight off invading pathogens, super important. We have the cytoskeleton, which is a network of protein fibers which help the organelles and cell move and assist in cell division. So found in both eukaryotic and prokaryotic cells, and it helps the cell maintain its shape and support. As the name implies, it's a skeleton. So our skeletons help us maintain our structure, and the cytoskeleton helps the cell maintain its structure. So this is what a cytoskeleton looks like. So this is the cytoskeleton dyed different colors. You don't need to know the different types of cytoskeleton or what it's made up of, but this will help you visualize what it looks like. So you can picture this inside a cell holding the structure up. This part here, this blue part, is the nucleus, and you can see how the different parts of the cytoskeleton hold the cell shape. This one's even cooler because you can see exactly how it's holding the structure of the cell and giving it shape. Microtubules, which are small tubular structures made of protein filaments, and that are part of the cytoskeleton in eukaryotic cells only. They help move proteins and vesicles throughout the cell. Microtubules are also important because centrioles are made up of 9 triplets of microtubules. You can see how there are 3 microtubules here. If we get each triplet and put 9 of them together, like this, they make up a centriole. They are only found in animal cells. They're very important for animal cells, but only found in animal cells. And they're important because they help with cell division. Without centrioles, we cannot have cell division. Next, we have vacuoles. They are membrane-bound sacs that differ between plants and animal cells. So they're found in both, but they are different. In eukaryotic cells, obviously, because they are membrane-bound. Vacuoles, so what do they do? In plant cells, there is one large central vacuole, and this central vacuole stores water, nutrients, and also aids in cellular digestion. For animal cells, we have multiple small vacuoles. They do not store water and nutrients, but rather just waste, as they aid in cellular digestion. So one large vacuole in plant cells, smaller, and multiple small vacuoles in animal cells. Our last structure, or our last organelle that we're going to look at, is the cell wall, and it is a structure consisting of cellulose that surrounds the cell or plasma membrane, found in both eukaryotes and prokaryotes. Within eukaryotes, they are only found in plant cells. However, prokaryotes all have a cell wall, but it's made up of different materials. They help protect the cell and maintain homeostasis. They give plant cells a very rigid, hard structure. So all plant cells look very rectangular, whereas animal cells will look a little bit more round, a little bit irregular, whereas plant cells have this very uniform rectangular structure, which is because of the cell wall. So let's see how much you know already about cells and organelles. So pause this video now and write down your answers for these 6 questions, and then we're going to go through them. So, number 1, cell theory states that living things are made up of cells. Of course, this is our topic for this video. Number 2, the cell theory states that cells are the basic structure and function of life. Number 3, the cell theory states that all cells come from pre-existing cells. The 2 general types of cells are prokaryotic cells and eukaryotic cells. Membrane-bound organelles are found in prokaryotic or eukaryotic cells. As we know, they are found in only eukaryotic cells. And number 6, plant and animal cells are eukaryotic cells. Okay, so pause this slide again and write down your answers for questions 7 to 12. So, number 7, true or false? All organelles have very similar functions inside the cell. That is false. They actually have very different functions inside the cell, as we know. Number 8, true or false? Prokaryotic cells contain a nucleus. This is false. They do not contain a nucleus. We know this because a nucleus is membrane bound, and prokaryotic cells do not have any membrane bound organelles. Number 9, true or false? Plant cells have one large vacuole, whilst animal cells have many smaller vacuoles. True. Number 10, true or false? All cells, plant, animals, bacteria, contain DNA, cell membrane, ribosomes, and cytoplasm. This is true. So, all cells have DNA. Super important, we cannot live without DNA. They all have a cell membrane surrounding the cell. Ribosomes are important for creating proteins, and cytoplasm. These structures are not membrane bound, so all cells have them. Number 11, what type of cell contains chloroplasts? Plant cells. We know this because chloroplasts are super important in photosynthesis. And lastly, true or false? That's spelt incorrectly, but anyway, animal cells contain a cell wall. False. Animal cells do not contain a cell wall. Plant cells and prokaryotic cells contain cell walls.